Okay, cool. So I think it's fair to say that everyone watching this video right now would agree that porn addiction, compulsive sexual behavior doesn't happen out of nowhere, right? So logically speaking, there needs to be a cause for every effect. There needs to be an event that happened in order for us to get in a situation where we started using pornography, we started in a compulsive behavior. Because look, it doesn't happen out of nowhere, right? Like something had to happen. We don't suddenly land in a situation where we start watching porn. Something had to happen, or a series of events had to happen, or a lack of events had to happen for us to land in this situation where we start watching porn. We then decide, okay, at some point we try to quit, and then the event of quitting becomes the actual hard part itself, and now we're in this situation with all these negative consequences, and we're in this cycle, right? So what I thought I'd do here is split this all up into sections to make better sense of it. And so we'll deal with the cause part for this section, right? So here what I've done is I've started with splitting this into two. So I've got an input here and then a stimulus. So an input sort of invokes a stimulus. So the input could be something like perhaps you were abused as a child. Maybe you went through bullying, or perhaps an intense experience as we see here. So you might have been in a car crash, you might have had an early death in the family, which was unexpected, and therefore a lot of strong emotions sort of occurred, which then you were thinking, damn, all these emotions here, I need to sort of deal with them in some sort of way. I don't know how to do that. Oh, but well, there's this porn thing that has sort of been exposed to me, and so therefore let's use that as an outlet. I think what's important to also note here is that it doesn't necessarily have to be a traumatic or an intense experience that you had, which sort of begins all this. It could be the case that you actually had an unfavorable environment in terms of your outlets for use in your free time. So an environment that was very conducive to developing a compulsive behavior, such as lack of activities, lack of prospects for free time, etc., right? And it could also be paired with the fact that pornography is very normalized, pornography is very accessible, and therefore you just saw it as something very normal, and you landed in this situation where pornography became a habit. And yeah, we find ourselves in a situation where we're constantly using it and forming an addiction, and that's also a very common situation as well. So we've established the input, we've established the event, and that goes into the stimulus box. So for the purposes of this video, we have trauma as the one that we're highlighting here. Although, of course, a lot of stress could come from an input. You've also got boredom, the lack of activities highlighting there, overexposure. So for example, we had a member in the family who had magazines lying around, or we had like an open laptop from a relative. We got curious on the laptop and we found stuff on there. The usual stuff, right? Loneliness is another one, and normalization. So, as in my situation, when we were going to school, when we were going to meet friends, etc., pornography was a very normal thing to sort of talk about or be exposed to, and therefore we didn't really see anything wrong. We didn't have an established boundary on it, right? So this is the sort of stimulus situation which we find ourselves in, and that then comes on to the stage, right? So all of this gets us landed into a situation where we have like a large potential for a compulsive behavior to develop, large potential for compulsivity here. And this could be, and this is important to note, it could be the genesis, so it could be the original thing that's got us into it, or it could be a current event. So we're experiencing loneliness in the current day, or overexposure or stress. That could be a stimulus that sort of puts us into a state of compulsivity. And so yeah, with that all established, we can pretty much say that yes, a cause leads to an effect. So in our case, it's porn use, our compulsive behavior, And we all go through this stage in the middle, which is exposure to porn, a large dopamine surge, supercharged reward, stimulus. Now, it's pretty fair to say that all of us who have tried to quit porn understand the supercharged part, given how difficult we begin to discover stopping the behavior is. Now, I just want to mention that I feel that 90% of us watching this video understand this concept of the cause and effect. And I just want to go back to something I said earlier on at the start of the video. And that was that it's not of huge importance to go back into the past, go back to solving and mending your trauma in order to stop your compulsive porn usage. And I stand by that, but I thought it would be useful to take us through this sequentially, step by step, in order to sort of establish why I've come to this conclusion and why that is the case. Nice. So now we've established the whole cause and effect thing. Now, we have here the factor of volume times time, right? So a lot of us will start off using pornography for, let's say, maybe 2 to 3 times a day, or maybe per week, right? Or maybe we do it like X amount of times per month. So this is what that volume is here. So X times per day, week, etc. That gets multiplied or compounded by the time value, right? So that could be, this, constant repeated action over years, decades, or maybe even, more than 1 decade, maybe 2 to 3 decades. And a lot of us end up in that situation where we've been sort of racking up the count, so to speak. And that's been happening over years. And so we get into a situation where we've started to have this neural wiring effect happen. So our neural pathways become what's known as addicted neural pathways, which we're going to get onto. But essentially what we've built over the years is a dependency to a mind mood altering experience, right? And so what will happen is it comes into this, red zone, I like to call it, which is the addicted neural pathways, but we'll get into that in a minute. So what we can then establish is, okay, volume over time, neural rewiring happens, and we've got this situation where we're repeatedly using pornography, right? So repeated use changes and strengthens neural pathways. So we've got brain changes occurring at this point. So this is the part of the video where I'd say 90% of us are currently sort of at, and the place where we're all very familiar with, that place of trying to stop this effect, this place of trying to quit the behavior. So we've been using pornography for a long time, and then it comes to, okay, now I'm looking to stop because it's giving me so much negative impact in my life. It's blocking me from my ambitions, it's stopping me feeling joy in my life. The list is endless, and we all have a list of endless reasons why we should stop using pornography and masturbation. So we come to this bit, and typically what happens is, what I would like to say is we all start off in the blue box. The blue box being the box which deals with the effect alone, right? So we go out and think, right, now I just want to stop watching pornography, I want to stop masturbation, I want to stop both because they're giving me all this pain, and I just want to stop the effect, right? The porn use. And so this is where a lot of us fall into the sort of misunderstanding of how to stop this. We've all seen some of these strategies in the blue box. So NoFap, absolutely. Counting days, counting streaks, the classical 30-day streak, 90-day streak, 180-day streak, right? These are all sort of benchmarks in, what would you call it? A no-fapper's life when they try to quit pornography and masturbation. We've all been there, and I'm pretty sure if you've gone on this journey, at some point or another, you've heard of NoFap and the NoFap forum, right? Another one, meditation. So meditating for perhaps 30 minutes or an hour, and sometimes meditation is very useful in this situation, but you're going to understand why it's not really a sort of maintainable strategy or even a realistic one when you're trying to quit this thing, just because of the nature of how the addiction is actually working. And so this one quickly becomes not very effective. Replacement behaviors, so that would be what I used to do is I used to feel an urge to masturbate or watch porn, and what would happen is I would go outside, I'd run a lap around the block and come back to where I was originally. Another example is jumping on a video game, playing that until the urges have sort of quietened down, only for the urges to inevitably come back, and the same thing would happen again, and I'd keep on using that as my strategy and eventually relapse. Self-improvement is another one, so sort of taking on self-improvement ventures, if you want to call it that. So things such as taking courses, things such as extensive reading, stuff that sort of alters your sort of mentality and sort of your development as a person, which is a very good thing. But if you're using it as a strategy to stop your behavior with pornography, it quickly shows not to be very effective due to the fact that you're not actually actively working on your addiction. Blockers is another one. I've had 1 or 2 blockers in my time trying to quit this, and safe to say I end up finding a way around them and finding a way to sort of gamify my experience and sort of trying to quit porn, right? Because it's sort of, you're making a game out of trying to get rid of the blocker, and then you actually eventually get rid of it, and you're still dealing with all the urges and the addiction. Another one is hiding devices, so hiding your laptop, hiding your internet cable. I remember hiding my internet cable at some point. I hid it in a university locker, and I locked it and I lost the key. But eventually what happens is I bought a new cable and I just ended up relapsing. And this list is very extensive, and we could add so many more onto this list, but you guys get the idea. These are strategies to deal with the effect immediately being our pornography use. And I think what I would like to say at this point is, although these are strategies that we have all tried, what it's worth mentioning is stopping the effect, stopping it at this level is the right way to go. It's just that these things in here, these things in the blue box, are simply the wrong strategy. So then what happens is, I feel, is a very sort of natural evolution within a person who's trying to quit masturbation and pornography. What tends to happen is we shift from the blue box, or partly shift from the blue box over to the green box. Now, when we're in the green box, our mindset is, okay, well, I tried all these things to stop the porn use directly. I've tried all this stuff to stop the effect. Maybe what I need to do is go back into the past. I need to go back and look at my trauma and see, okay, where are the answers here? Maybe if I'm to go back in the past and solve my trauma, maybe if I'm going to go back in the past and heal my quote-unquote inner child, which is a very popular term in this space, then I might be able to get some answers. I might be able to understand all this stuff, and from there I can sort of gauge how I'm going to stop, and let's say stop more easily, so to speak, right? So what then happens is we start trying the strategies within the green box. So therapy to solve your trauma. 12-step groups is I would say is a crossover between these boxes because of some of the things that they employ. Extensive reading is another one, kind of ties into self-improvement a little bit, but it's a bit more deliberate in the sense that we're reading books on trauma, reading books on child, self, etc., right? Journaling is another one. Self-improvement is another crossover one, but you guys get the idea. We're trying to go back in the past and go up, got the little medic icon here. solve the cause, right? So we're trying to cut it off at the cause level. And this is, again, a natural part of like evolving as a porn addict to sort of understand how to stop this stuff. But what we get ourselves into is that we seem to not understand at this point is that even if we're to sort of solve the cause, we need to understand that because we've been using pornography for such a long time, due to the volume times time, due to the exposure to porn repeatedly, this whole section here, and due to the fact that because of this neural wiring has happened over years and years and years of however many times we're using it per day, per week, per month. Unfortunately, what happens for us is that we miss a whole part, which is coming back to this, the red section. Because we've been using it for so long, we've developed addicted neural pathways. And we'll come on to that bit in a minute. But what I want to say here is that even if you were to solve this, even if you were to solve the effect just by directly doing it, like let's say we could, last 10 days without fapping, or 10 days without porn, or however many days, let's say even 90 days. Let's see even if we got to that number of days. Or let's say we actually did the work, we went to therapy and we solved our trauma. We went back into the past and got, a bit of, clarity on things, and we solved a few things and remembered a few things and try and, unpacked a lot of that stuff. We're still left with this situation of the addicted neural pathways. These are not going to be changed by these two. And so what happens is we end up in a situation where even if we solve this, even if we last X number of days, we still have addicted neural pathways and we're still going to be prompted by compulsive desire. At this point, you might be thinking, well, I'm starting to get things now because, I've done the work here and I've done these things here and I just still find it so hard to quit. I almost feel as if there's something wrong with me. I feel like there's something, why can't I stop? I'm doing the work. I'm doing all these things to stop. I'm doing what everyone is telling me to do to sort of stop this behavior. It's most likely because we haven't solved this part, which is the addicted neural pathways itself, the mechanism of the addiction when you're in a full-time active addiction. And this compulsive desire is something that isn't solved if you've solved the other two things, right? This needs to be solved before addressing these two things if nothing else has worked. So in this next section, I feel that a lot of us will gain a lot of sort of clarity on what might be the actual problem in our strategies that we've been trying so far. And so the concept I want to cover is that, we've had this happen to us as volume times time of engaging in porn. Neural wiring happens and we've developed what is known as addicted neural pathways. Our neural pathways have been accustomed to porn, and we've developed a dependency on a mind mood altering experience that invokes compulsive desire and has our head filled with what we call junky thoughts. So what's happened here is, over continued use over these years, we've developed desensitization to normal rewards and increased impulsivity. So we've got not just this situation of, the genesis and the current events, which might put us in a state of, compulsive behavior, but we've now also got this whole area of addicted neural pathways, so to speak, which we built up over the years, which also has to be dealt with. But the main thing here is that the main thing that's keeping us in this cycle, the main sort of final boss, if you want to call it, that keeps us in the addiction, keeps us confused, and keeps us in this constant cycle of shame, disappointment, depression, when it comes to porn addiction, is the addicted neural pathways. And dealing with these in the correct way is going to give us a lot of mental clarity, and also lead us to a situation where we're able to stop our compulsive behavior for good. And I just thought I'd mention that ultimately understanding this concept of addicted neural pathways and how it relates to, my compulsive behavior of using pornography, and how compulsive desire is, constantly pinging between the two, is ultimately what got me free from this addiction for good. And sincerely, guys, it just gave me a second chance at life, and I've never looked back since. And it's just definitely an encouraging point just to say this, that you don't have to lose hope, and that with the right strategy and with a proactive mindset, you can truly just stop this thing from impeding your life altogether. And I really hope this will help some people ultimately. So guys, don't give up hope. This definitely is something that you should have a look at. All right, so let's have a closer look at some junky thoughts. So this is what we call in the beyond compulsion method sort of thoughts that appear. So compulsive thoughts or addicted sort of related thoughts that happen, which sort of you typically call perhaps triggers, or you typically call them sort of points of weakness. And surprisingly, a lot of this stuff which we find here is something that I originally thought was just part of my personality. So I thought shame was part of my personality, feelings of a lack of self-trust, irritability, loss of enthusiasm. I thought a lot of this stuff was just generally due to my personality and not actually a symptom of the addiction itself. And I hope this will clear up a lot of things for you guys as we go through them. But look, typically what happens is, with me personally, when I was having these junky thoughts appear, I still have them. What you'd have is image and video flashback sort of memories. So you have a sort of flashback to like a video or an image that you used to watch, and spend a lot of time looking at videos and thinking, oh right, well that video, I remember that, how good that video was, or I remember like there was just so many videos that were looking like it, or perhaps pictures, right? Thoughts like that, thoughts of things that you've seen in the past that you'd like to engage in again, because that's how your sort of addicted neural pathways are wired. It's looking to seek more dopamine, seek more of that mind mood altering experience, right? Feelings of helplessness and hopelessness. So we all go through that, like, because we fail time again and again and again and again. We constantly keep on relapsing, constantly keep on feeling that, okay, this is the last time, but then we fail again. And we get into the state of hopelessness and helplessness, a very common thought pattern that's promoted by the addicted neural pathways, because ultimately the addicted neural pathways' number one goal is to keep you in the addiction, to keep you engaging, to keep you hooked to the dopamine and the mind mood altering experience that you've constantly been engaging in, because ultimately it sees that as a reward. It sees that as something that, okay, well, I feel really good when engaging in this, and so I want to seek more of it, right? It's not nefarious. It's not sort of something that's malicious against you. It's just that the brain is doing what it should do as a natural organism, which is to get more of that feel-good pleasure, and it's found a source of it, and so it'll prompt you more towards that source of feel-good factor. Okay, cool. So we've also got shame. Very common, guys. Very common. Felt that before, too many times, countless times even. It's very common in addicted neural pathways to feel shame. It really keeps you locked in a cycle, and it does that by design because it can keep you engaging. Disconnectedness, feeling disconnected from people, feeling disconnected from your hobbies, your interests, your family, your people. Another common feeling that comes up, because once you're in that state of isolation, it gets you in sort of a mindset and a mind frame, that is, where you're more likely to engage, more likely to feel sort of down about yourself, and this keeps the cycle going, again, by design. Lack of self-trust. All of us have been there. All of us have doubted ourselves. Lack of self-trust being, we wanted to quit this behavior. We've tried so many times, and we, failed again. And this adds to the fire, right? This adds to the sort of cycle and keeps us in it. Irritability. Very common one. Just a state of mind that gets you really antsy, very sort of jittery, in a bad mood, and a lot of strong emotions come from that, and it can just compound until you're looking to engage again. Loss of enthusiasm happens all the time. After every relapse. You lose interest in doing productive things, and enthusiasm in the fact of sort of, okay, can I quit this thing? Well, I'd failed again, and that enthusiasm naturally just decreases because you're stuck in that cycle, not being able to get out of it. Guys, felt that countless times with everyone here. I felt that countless times. Yeah, loss of faith and belief, very common, guys, very common. If you belong to a faith group, if you have a religion, it's very hard to connect with all that stuff if you're in this constant mental conflict, this constant mental battle of, you've got your religion to connect with, for one, but then there's also trying to connect with yourself, and there's all these junky thoughts flowing around, and this self-deprecation, self-sabotage, and it's very hard to connect with your faith in that way. Also loss in faith and loss of belief in your own self is another one, going back to the lack of self-trust, right? Isolation, very common, very expected. Again, the addiction thrives in this state, within this mental state, that is. And look, I've been there. In COVID, I was full-time in this addiction, and this really, hit home with me, and it just really wasn't a good place to be. Really affected my mental health during the pandemic. That's really when that addiction really kicked in, all those symptoms, feeling really bad. And yeah, very expected, guys, very normal. Seeking more and more answers. So because you're trying to quit this continually, because you're trying to, you've tried so many methods to quit this, just like we've got, this list here, the green and the blue box here. Because you've been trying so many methods to, stop this problem, you're just seeking more and more and more methods, more understanding, more ways of looking at it, more ways of trying to stop the addiction, stop the behavior. And it's really driving you kind of down a rabbit hole, because everything you're trying is not the thing that's working. The things that you're trying on isn't connecting or dealing with the addictive neural pathways, right? Very, very common. We've all been there. I certainly went through that, trying everything and having it not succeed for me. Feeling not good enough, not feeling good enough. Very common. The most common chunky thought. Not good enough to quit, not good enough to have good things in life, not good enough to, break free of this addiction, not deserving of, something good in your life because you're in this problem. You haven't got past this period of your life where you stopped your pornography addiction, or any addiction, that is, right? And you're just really hard on yourself, and it's really hard to slip into that way of thinking. I've certainly been there. And yeah, it's expected, guys, very expected. And there's many more which we can cover. I guess that'll be for another video. And then we get to the part where it's sort of, we have this, we have all these junky thoughts from the addicted part of the mind, the addicted neural pathways, right? And it's this constant back and forth of compulsive desire, that compulsive desire constantly trying to pull us into the porn use, pull us back into the behavior. And when you have an urge, you're thinking, damn, what do I do with it? And you sort of have this feeling of, when I feel this compulsive desire, I'm a completely different person, because when I'm in my normal self, I wouldn't go and watch porn, right? But all of a sudden I get this urge, and I can become a completely different person, and I get this compulsive desire. And this is where it's at work, right? I was there trying to figure out for so long. But yeah, once I understood this back and forth dynamic, this constant conflict, which goes back and forth from the addictive neural pathways, I didn't know how to deal with that, right? But then getting on the Beyond Compulsion method, managed to stop it because I had the right tools, right? But before then, it was this story for, at least 9 years of my life, been trying to quit this, and obviously the 17 full years of addiction, no doubt about it. But I was in this state for years, and I didn't really know what to do, because you have this addictive neural pathways at work. you also have, the current event, potential for compulsive behavior situations come up in your life as well. And, this happens, right? But the good news here is if you get in control of this, if you're able to connect with this addicted neural pathway, if you're able to connect with the compulsive desire when it comes up and work with it and think through the compulsive desire and process that correctly, you're able to give yourself enough room to think, okay, well, I can make a choice here. I can make a choice whether to engage in porn or whether to sit through the temporary discomfort, which we'll get onto now. Okay, cool. So earlier we talked about neural wiring. So what's happened is we've had volume times time. So we've been engaging in our porn addiction over years, decades, etc. So what's happened is the brain has become wired to a compulsive pornography habit because addicted neural pathways are now formed because of this neural rewiring, right? Now, note that this is a current state. So our current state is that we have addicted neural pathways to pornography, hence compulsive pornography use. Now, notice that I said the word current. This is very important because the word current means that, okay, if it's a current state, it can change because it is a temporary state. Temporarily, in our temporary state of neural pathways, we have addicted neural pathways to pornography. These can be changed because of neuroplasticity. What we effectively want to achieve here is use a tool to essentially reverse this process over time, right? And whenever an urge comes through, we want to use that tool in order to rewire the effects of these addicted neural pathways, right? We want to connect with a compulsive desire when it comes up, connect when the urges come up, connect to our wanting to engage. Whenever we feel like we want to engage, or whenever we're thinking about it on any level, we want to use this tool and connect with the desire so we can begin the rewiring process in that moment. We go here, we have our tool set of our choice, which we choose to use to do the neural rewiring. And, we need to be proactive in using whatever this strategy might be, right? We need to have a strategy which deals with connecting to the compulsive desire when it comes up, connecting with the urges, sitting with the discomfort, and facilitating the choice to engage or not to engage. And obviously the goal here is not to engage. And we want to do that from our rational thinking. So we want to put the rational mind in control, and we want to do that from a place of strength and power, right? We don't want to be sort of running away from urges. We don't want to be running away from this compulsive desire. We really want to be connecting to it. And we want to be doing it, from a place of assertiveness even, or, strength and power, as I put it there. But you don't want to be sort of passive with it. You want to be proactive and engage with it willingly, and willingly sit through the discomfort of the urge, willingly sit through the discomfort of the emotion that you're thinking, right? So we think through the choice here of whether to engage or not, and ultimately we want to choose not to engage. And when you're running this strategy, you want to weigh up the benefits and the disadvantages of engaging, of course. So the benefits of not engaging, the disadvantages of engaging. And so that's where the rational mind can really think through that choice. So in the Beyond Compulsion method, we use a 5-fact script. So whenever compulsive desire occurs, we read through the script, read through something simple, repeatable, reliable, that will manage to get us in the state of accepting the temporary discomfort, thinking through the choice, do I want to engage or not, and making the right choice, making the rewiring happen in that moment by putting the rational thinking, the rational mind, so to speak, in control. as you know, as opposed to our compulsive mind, our, let's say, child self. And now we can come back full circle, because the good thing here is now we've got this tool to deal with this compulsive desire. We've got this tool to stop our compulsive behavior. We've got a tool to connect with the addicted neural pathways, the addicted part of the mind, and really deal with all these junky thoughts, not have them affect us, not have them invoke this sort of constant conflict in our mind, have this constant sort of not being sure of ourselves, all these emotions that we used to feel when we were in the addiction full time. We've now got this tool to deal with all that so we don't engage, because ultimately what keeps us in the addiction is engaging, right? And if we're able to stop the porn use, we're able to have control of, you know, this part of the mind while simultaneously rewiring it, right? And this is where the good part comes in, because we can then go back to these things such as, you know, therapy, extensive reading, self-improvement, journaling, and we can approach all these things, go back to fix our past, go back to uncover stuff, you know, with professional help. Because don't forget, all these things are actually pretty good, but now that we're not competing with this constant conflict, we're not competing with the addicted neural pathways, which is a full-time job to be in the first place, we can approach all these things from a point of clarity. And it's just going to make the process of all that a lot easier once we've got like a reliable tool that we can fall back on to deal with this problem, right? So it all comes full circle. Deal with the addicted neural pathways before doing therapy, doing all this journaling, doing all this deep work that we thought we needed to do in the first place, right? So that's how I would rationally put it, and I think that by far it's the most rational strategy, and it's the most accurate strategy in order to fully sort of, you know, one, beat porn addiction, but two, have, you know, put yourself in a position that you're able to deal with trauma and deal with your past.